Oh my gosh. Oh, I was stumped. How many people have read Oppenheimer? There's one in the room. And who's seen Barbie? Oh, good. We have two in the room that have seen Barbie. Beautiful. Oh, and now the question is, who's been to Los Alamos? In the room. So
Can you increase the volume?
I increase the volume. I will try. This was an issue before, so if you cannot hear me, I will try to yell or speak louder. But we'll try. Welcome again. In the room, we have one elected and one former elected. We have our mayor, Larry Klein, and a former, Tara, were you the vice mayor? Yes, Tara was the vice mayor a few years ago, Tara Martin Milius. We also in the room have Mike Cerrone, who is on the Planning Commission, Leah Melman, who is on BPAC. We have Agnes Veit, who is on the Arts Commission, Paulina Zapato. Is it Zapato or Zapata? Zapata, who's on the Human Services Relations. Human Relations. I will get that soon. But so she's here. Our Zoom folks, let's see if I have any electeds. Oh, Linda Sell is here. She is one of our council people. The host has spotlighted my video. Okay. I think that's all my electeds. If I've missed somebody, please let me know. And one of our announcements is on the housing element. So Chuck Fraley is going to talk a bit about that.
Hello, everybody. Give me just a second. I'm going to share my screen here. Just a quick update. Ooh, could someone invite me to share my screen? I can talk a little bit while that's going on. I accidentally logged out and logged back in. But the housing element, just a couple of quick updates. The city submitted a new draft of the housing element to HCD at the very end of June. And HCD has reviewed that, and at the end of July, they responded and requested some additional changes. If you want to find out kind of all the details and everything that's going on, our housing committee is going to be having a meeting on August the 9th from 2:30 to 3:30. Let me see if I can just share the details of that right quick. All right, yeah, so I'll also post that in the chat. So yeah, the housing committee is going to be having a meeting on August 9th from 2:30 to 3:30. We're going to talk about HCD's response letter and how Livable Sunnyvale wants to respond to that. And it's going to be on Zoom. The link's there again. And you can also email Agnes or me if you'd like to join or if you have any questions. And it'll also be on the Livable Sunnyvale calendar. That's it.
Thank you. I just put a notice in the chat.
There's no audio coming out.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah, but not very loud.
I can hear you good.
Okay. All right. Is anyone else besides Gail having trouble hearing? If you raise your hand on Zoom, I can see if you are having trouble hearing me. I don't think so. Okay. All right. So On Zoom. Oh, Gail's having trouble. Okay. So I would like to introduce our first speaker. This is Scott Myers Lipton. He has been a teacher at San Jose State University for 24 years. He is author of such books as Change, A Student's Guide to Social Action, Change, A Guide to Teaching Social Action. He is the director of Teaching Social Action Initiative, and he's also the author of the Pain Index, which is what he'll speak about tonight. But as a little plug, he also has what's called, him and his wife, Diane, Retreat Center. You have to go look at it. It's beautiful. So I'm already married. I don't know if I can convince my husband to marry me again, but that's another story. We were trying to show Scott's YouTube video, but I'm not going to be able to do that. So I have put it in the chat. If you can see that, we can post it also on our website. We can show this one at the end.
Yeah.
But the other slide, Chuck, and then I will turn the mic over to Scott to get us started. Scott, you can go.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me. So I'm recently retired. I was at San Jose State for 24 years, and I told my students 24 years at any one job is enough. So I'm on to really focusing on the pain index, both here and educating as many people as I can about it. I'm the lead author of it. I'll eventually turn that over to someone. We have to find who that someone will be at some point in the future. But at least for the next year, I'll be doing and actually already collecting data for the 5th annual report. So here's an early plug to that. If you have any data that you think is important to be in that, you can send it to smlipton@gmail.com. I'll put it in there, and I'm glad to explore the study and to look at it. But the pain index is a document that that I created as a response to the murder of George Floyd. And I felt like I wanted to do something. If any of you were on the streets at that time, we were, if you're in my age bracket, we were the oldest ones by far, in our 60s. It was really a youth-led movement at that time. And I was like, what could I do to advance the conversation around racism in our community? And so I had the idea for maybe 10 years to do a pain index, focusing on Silicon Valley. And I approached Bill Armeline, who recently has stepped down from that position, but was the Human Rights Institute director. And I said, would you publish it if I produced it? And he said, absolutely. And in 3 weeks, after working 24/7 for 3 weeks straight, we produced the first pain index with Bill's help, and then have now done 4 of them. So the 4th annual report has come out. I hope you have access to it. If you don't, I'll post where you can get access to it. It is a meta-analysis, which means that I'm not doing the research, or the team that, and in this iteration of it, the 4th annual report, actually had 5 student interns working on it, along with 3 other faculty. So it was a team effort. And it looks at 60 plus studies that have been done on Silicon Valley. And generally, if I don't say Silicon Valley in the report, it generally refers to Silicon Valley, and that's San Mateo County and Santa Clara County. And if it's an individual city like San Jose or San Jose metro area or Los Altos, I'll say that in the document. It has 110 statistics. So it's a lot of information, and it's designed to be very provocative. It's designed to go with a number and a data. We have this kind of the top 12 highlights of it on the board right now. But there's 110 stats in it, and each one has at the end of it the footnote, which you can then go to the actual study and find the research itself. and the hope of doing it is really to spark community organizations such as yourselves to one, to be educated about the inequality around with the, both income and wealth inequality, but from a kind of how race is playing out in that dynamic, and then hopefully spark ideas from the community to solve some of these, as well as encourage the elected politicians to respond. And so far, we've had one success. Senator Dave Cortese has put forward SB 333. We got it. It actually passed the Senate. It's in the House, but I don't think it'll pass this year. Maybe next year. But he was frustrated that if you look at the pain index this year, we're ranked #1 in youth homelessness in San Jose, and he wanted to do something about that. So it's SB 333 is a guaranteed income for 15,000 high school seniors who are graduating for $1,000 a month for 6 months. There's a pilot project which the county will run. Susan Ellenberg put that forward, and working with Dave got like $3 million from the state. So 50 high school students will receive, I think it's $1,500 for 3 months over the summer. So that is kind of our first success where we actually have moved some legislation. But for the politicos who are in the room, and for you as a community organization, hopefully after this conversation and hearing about it, you'll start brainstorming and putting forward. And I know you're already thinking about ideas, but hopefully this will even help as you put forward ideas to solve these problems. So I'm gonna talk about the report, but before I do, I think it'd just be fun to hear if you've had a chance to read it. Have people seen it, Angela, as it was sent out? So maybe just to say, if from the people in the room and in online, what was the statistic? Because there's over 110 plus. What was the statistic that caught your attention? Because obviously I can't talk about all 110 in this conversation, but I will talk about the general kind of overview of kind of the trends in a second. But I thought it'd just be good to hear from you. What was the statistic that caught your attention? I see Eugene have his hand up. Go, Eugene.
Hey, everybody. You want me to introduce myself to everybody who's not familiar?
Sure.
Yeah, my name is Eugene Bradley. I am the founder of the Silicon Valley Transit Users as a public transit advocacy and watchdog group. We monitor particularly VTA. Anyway, two things that stand out to me. One is the number of clients that Second Harvest of Silicon Valley is serving for groceries each month. That's easily right there, half the population of San Jose alone right there. And the other statistic that stood out to me was the fact that Google, Adobe, Intel, Zoom, and other companies only gave a total of $72 million to nonprofits to help resolve some of the issues, which is just 0.2% of their revenue, given that these companies alone make almost $7 trillion in market cap alone. I was just reading Wall Street Journal about this, and this just proves that Silicon Valley is just not the wealthy that we like to say it is.
Yeah.
Anybody that says Silicon Valley is the home of the economic engine and wealth engine of California, when they read this, I feel like it's a total lie. We got to correct that.
Thank you, Eugene. Anyone else? Numbers that jumped at people?
So this is Agnes. I had one, and well, I had a lot actually, but one was the 3.7 number of minimum wage jobs needed to cover the cost of a 2-bedroom apartment in San Jose.
Yeah. It's a powerful number. Thank you for that. Colleen, you want to go?
As a woman, I thought this number was going a different direction, 59,000. The wage gap between male and female workers went up in 2019. I thought that number was going down. That's my take on it.
Yeah, that over the last 3 years, that was the 2019. It's now from 2019 to 2022, that number went up 7,500. to expand the gap that was already there.
Oh, it went up in 3 years. Oh, okay, okay, okay.
It was from the
Yeah.
from the pandemic to 2022.
Which I assume it's because more women had to leave work because of the kids. Okay, thanks. Yep, got it.
I believe that's the reason why too. Anyone else?
Is there anybody in the room? I can hand the mic over.
Yeah.
No one's raising their hand, Scott.
Okay. So let me just tell you, I'll go through some of the key findings of the report, kind of a general overview, and then talk about solutions, because to me, I'm not doing this just to be like a downer, I'm not trying to just depress people, but I am trying to, focus the attention of the community and to show some trends about what's happening in our community. So we've now done this 4 times over 3 years. We're starting to see that, what's staying the same and what's getting worse. And then some kind of shocking numbers we found about the wealth inequality, which I want to talk about. So one is just where things are staying the same, and kind of what I would call consistent and persistent inequality. And another way we'd call it is institutionalized racism. So the persistence of these inequalities, and for me, can be understood by looking at Dr. King's analysis of how he understands the social world. And he had a term he used, and he called it the curious formula. And he said it dates back to 1787, he'd say, starting with a 3/5 compromise in the US Constitution, where we all learned in US history, of course, where a Black person is defined or was defined as 60% of a human being when determining taxation and representation. And Dr. King asserted that this curious formula that was from the founding of the country was still alive in his time in the 1960s. And it played out by African Americans receiving a half of the good things of life and 2 times the bad when compared to whites. So half the good and 2 times the bad. And so in 1968, the year King was murdered and assassinated, the unemployment rate was 5% for whites, and 2 times the bad of that is 10%. And that's what it was for African Americans. The poverty level was 10% for whites. And in this case, sometimes, by the way, it's 2 and 3 times, and sometimes even a little higher than 3. But it was 10% for whites and compared to 35% for African Americans. Sadly, this curious formula still exists today in Silicon Valley in 2022, 2023. Home ownership, 26% for Blacks, 63% for whites. Per capita income, $45,000 for Blacks, $92,000 for whites. Poverty, whites at 5%, African Americans, 16%. Average annual wages, $78,000 compared to $142,000 for whites. Unemployment, 2.4 times the rate that African Americans are filing claims of unemployment. So clearly, this institutionalized racism that existed from the founding of the country to 1968 until today is still present. And so I just think it's a good thing, or it's a good way to frame it, that this curious formula has existed. And if we don't do anything, even though we don't have the signs any longer, thank goodness, right? The signs have come down on drinking fountains, and we've taken away the laws that made it by law that you would have to have discrimination. Those aren't there, but the underlying political economics is still present, and these numbers show it. So that's one way to think about it. And of course, in Silicon Valley, other people of color, particularly Latinos and Native Americans, and some Asian American groups, particularly the Vietnamese and the Filipino Americans, and also Laotians, and we could talk about others, also find themselves as part of this curious formula, even though they have different historical roots relative to the history of white supremacy and the conquest of the American West. But they are part of that as well. So that's one. This curious formula exists, and it's persistent and consistent, and it's been that way in '68, and it's that way when we started in 2019, and it's that way in 2023, and it will be that way in 2063 if there aren't changes. So that's one. The second point after doing this 4 years, is that the pain index shows some things are actually getting worse. So what are those things? So here's just a series of things that are actually getting worse. So fentanyl overdose deaths in Santa Clara County increased to 160 deaths, up 28 people. Food insecurity, this was mentioned in Silicon Valley, increased to 460,000 clients per month being served by Second Harvest Food Bank. That's each month, and that's up 10,000 from the previous year. Eviction filings, of course, we know around that. Eviction filings are up 295 late last year compared to April, where it was, I believe, 22. Homeless families, even though homeless families in San Jose had a small drop, 5%, or actually overall homelessness went down 5%, homeless families went up, and it was twice the rate from the previous year on that single night count. 891 families were found to be homeless on that night. And then the average monthly rent continues, it continually rises. It's now $25.49 in the San Jose metro area, a 3% increase. So that's kind of in the last year. And then since the pandemic, some things have gotten worse as well. And so one was already mentioned, the wage gap between college educated men and women have increased. Median household income in Silicon Valley went down $550. And over a 5-6 year period, the graduation gap increased between white students and students of color. So we know that, we know there's persistent and consistent inequality, and we know that some things are getting worse. And then the third thing I'd want to say is, and I could answer some questions. The third thing I would say is that up to this period, we knew there was a high concentration of wealth into the hands of a small group. But up to this point, we only had information on the 1%. And while the 1%, it's a good slogan, out of Occupy, that's a nice slogan. We are the 99%. When you're looking at wealth inequality, it's not a very good, and it's not very accurate, because the 1% it includes folks, doctors and lawyers, and those kind of folks, and it doesn't include where the vast amount of change is happening in inequality. And I became aware of this in 2013 and 14 when I started studying the 0.1% and the 0.01%, because the 0.01% is where, and the 0.1% is where the great changes are happening. It's not in that 0.9 that goes up to the 1%. And so now we have the numbers, and we have to thank the folks that did this. Rachel Massaro, I don't know if many of you know her. She's the lead author, or the kind of lead researcher for Joint Venture Silicon Valley. And I talked to her a couple of years ago about this issue, and she went out and did the research and found it. So we now know the wealth inequality, and we can break it down to the 0.001%, which is 8 families in Silicon Valley owning 6 times more wealth than the bottom 50%. So 8 families, that 0.001%. We know about 60 families, they own 13 times more wealth than the bottom 50%, or 500,000. And the 0.1, about 900 households, they own 26 times more wealth than the total wealth of the 500,000 households, the 50% and below. And just to kind of give you a couple of mind-blowing things, during the pandemic, which we showed in the last year's pain index, and I'll give you a website if you want to see all 4 of them. In the last year's pain index, we showed how regular, the median income for African Americans and Latinos were basically either stuck or actually decreasing a bit. But for the top 0.1%, and this is now looking at the United States, as well as in this local area, increased by 71% during the pandemic. So the pandemic was good for the 0.1% and above, but it wasn't so good for the average worker and for the bottom 20, 30, bottom 30, 40% of our people. It was not good. So, we actually have the numbers of who these folks are. We have that. So, the extreme billionaires, I call the 0.001%, and the billionaires, the 0.01, are mostly white, older, male, in contrast to the essential workforce of Silicon Valley, who are people of color and women. And that number of 28%, which is in this pain index, 28% even though they work, many of which don't make enough money to pay for rent, food, and other basics, 28%. And Russell Hancock from Silicon Valley and joint venture Silicon Valley, his quote, we use that because it's such a powerful quote. He said, if Silicon Valley were a country, that kind or this kind of wealth inequality or wealth disparity would be considered politically unstable. And for those policy wonks to get you at the absolute, if you look at the what we call the Gini coefficient, the absolute Gini coefficient is 0.7 in Silicon Valley, which is much higher if you look at it from the state and the nation, considerably higher than the 0.7 is. And that number is, as you closer get to one is like one person would control everything. And so that number is very high. And so he's talking about this incredible wealth in the hands of the few, where the vast, there's 500,000 people who are struggling to make ends meet. And so that's kind of the overview. I think I'll stop there, and then I have some thoughts about solutions. And I don't have any particular thoughts because this is not, the pain index is not so much, I don't want to feel like, I feel like, people should do X, Y, and Z. I feel like the hope is that people read these and read the numbers and then come up with solutions for the community and the elected officials. So I have some ideas though about how to make that conversation move forward, and I want to talk with you, but I'll stop there and say if you have any thoughts or reflections on what I said or questions. Or if I say one of my students, I was so powerful, I silenced you, which is not good.
This has me thinking more than what normally, if anything.
Good. Well, the numbers are devastating. And I think what you said earlier, I think the idea that there has, so many communities want to be Silicon Valley. Houston, there's all sorts of ones that want to be us, but they don't look at the whole picture of what's going on here.
So Scott, I have a question.
Yeah.
So what have you seen in 4 years that has maybe stayed the same or started to improve? And was it because of a program, an action, a bill, or education?
Well, I think the homeless numbers, they would have been a lot worse if there wasn't, a mass effort to deal with that. So I think, during that last year, we saw the numbers, tilt the right way. But I think the numbers were, a decrease in homelessness was 5% in San Jose. Santa Clara County was 1%. But I think if there wasn't the effort that was made during the pandemic, the numbers would have got even, those numbers would have been it would have gone the other way in the wrong direction. But to me, while that was headed, 1% and 5% is better than, having it increase. Obviously, we're not solving the problem. So, so that would be the one specific thing that I would say. I'm focused on definitely, on trying to see where those levels are. And to me, they particularly this one and the one before, because of the pandemic, things got worse. That things weren't getting better, right? So I can't point to like these ways that things are improving in our community, but I can say the homeless numbers would have been way worse without the effort of the county and the cities of focusing on the homeless crisis.
So yeah, you have a question from Bill Hilton.
Yeah, go Bill.
Yes, I'm curious to know whether if you had data like this, and I've never seen this kind of chart before, but if you had it for other metropolitan areas, in the United States, would you expect similar results? And is this really is what you're presenting a series of problems that are common to America today?
That's a great question. So my hope is that, and one of the things I'm going to do in my retirement is to work with other faculty around the country to try to develop pain indexes in other spaces. So there would be, in the various cities. So my hope was that we could do that kind of comparison. But I think there's a general issue around like the curious formula, right? That number around racial, race inequality is consistent, I think, with other numbers. I think where we differentiate is around twofold, around the wealth inequality in our community. I think that's one, because some of these communities don't have the level of wealth that we have. So I think that's one. But also, right, we've created some of these challenges by that wealth being developed. And, it's where the average apartment in San Jose for, can be $3,200. So when you have that creates then the crisis of youth homelessness. And, the number that sticks out in my head about my students at San Jose State, according to San Jose State themselves, is 11% of our student body will experience homelessness this coming year. 11%. And I think that is, a direct result of, I think, the high prices that are here in our community. So I think some are national and then some are local to us. But I think the wealth is because of our unique situation in Silicon Valley. I hope that answered.
So Gail, you had a question?
Yeah,
as
Gail.
well?
Yeah, Scott, thank you very much. I love the stuff. Bill, thank you for your question. Mine's along the same line. There real wages in the United States haven't really gone up much since the 80s. And I think what your data shows is that loss of the middle class in America. And it just really points that out to me. And I have the same question Bill does, is if you took other cities, the disparity of wealth probably wouldn't be as great. But if you went to a city like Austin, or New York, or Connecticut, Hartford, Connecticut, or Boston, Massachusetts, I think the weird stuff here is the vast difference between the educated workforce, the H-1Bs, and then you have people that aren't college educated. So the disparity, it's like if you had a Venn diagram, it gets, really stretched out between those two groups. And I think that's what exacerbates these figures. But the other question I have is, I don't know if it's solvable. So, because the problem is we just don't have enough housing to bring in people. I'm a believer that we're going to have robots in every store in another 5 years because we won't have any workers because they're all going to leave. But I really admire you saying where are solutions, because I don't know how the heck you solve it. So, but thank you very much for your work, and I hope it continues. And I have a feeling you can either create some kind of foundation to get other universities involved in this, because it's really important stuff. Thanks.
We're going to try. Anyone else before I'll say a few things about solutions?
So, Bill, this is Agnes again. I have a question about universal basic income. Have you followed that and seen a change in the dynamics that you're talking about today?
Well, I think there's, I just read an article about it. Like there's many. It's close to 100 different projects that are happening on universal basic income right now. So, and I think Gabe Cortese's idea is another example of that. And just so Dave really wanted to direct it toward college students, but the way the college gets the money through financial aid, it would have screwed up the students' financial aid. So we had to go to the high school to get the money. But I think that has been a change. I think the guaranteed income is, a bright spot. The question is, I think, there's been recent studies showing that it's had positive effects on people's lives. Now, once it's shown that, will the elected officials at the state level and at the other spaces, will they fund it? That's a question. I mean, I don't think anything will happen unless there's an engaged citizenry pushing it. But,
Is there anybody in the room that I can pass the mic to that has a question? Okay.
So let me tell you a couple of things. One is would you be interested, with doing something in Sunnyvale that would educate the community about the numbers and about the pain index? And there's the document itself. And I think, Angela, you put the document in there, right? Is that true? I think it's, you put it in there. So there it is. So the document is there. So one is to get it out to as many people as possible to read it. The second is that there's a documentary made about the pain index. A professor approached me, asked, would he be willing, what do you think about doing it? And I thought it was a great idea. So the Silicon Valley Community Foundation funded it, and it's being shown on PBS right now around the country. And when we could show that, and just, I want to invite you all, if you want to see it, on August 10th, the county board, it's the Human Rights, Santa Clara County Human Rights Commission is showing it, and going to have a community discussion around that. So you could go and see it, and then that's something maybe you all in Sunnyvale would like to do in your community, is to educate your community. So one is, I think we just have to have more education. So that's the easiest, is to educate. And then the second idea is to choose a stat and to come up with a policy and try to enact it. And I've done 2 of those in my life, and they both won. So I feel I'm 2 for 2. And I don't know how many of you know, but it was myself and my students that led and came up with the idea for the minimum wage campaign in San Jose. And with, very little support in the beginning, to build a large coalition of labor, faith, and the nonprofit community, we won 60-40, being outspent $2 million to $100,000. So it's possible that you can do something, and the students and I and others in that coalition, we did increase it from 8 to 10, and then immediately started working on 15. And I want to thank Sunnyvale, because Sunnyvale is, I believe you're at 1810, isn't that right? Minimum wage? I think you're 1810. I think it's Sunnyvale and
Yes, that was our mayor confirming it's 1810.
1810. So it's 18. I mean, Sunnyvale and Mountain View are at 1810, and this is a much longer conversation. But our mayor at the time, when we were pushing the increase, we wanted to go up immediately and to this higher number, and he didn't want to do that. And so we're at 17 right now. So we're $1.10 behind you. And it's a lot of money. It's over $2,000 by the end of the year. So, one of the things that we could do, I'm hoping to do, is I'm going to be meeting with city council members. They could do is easily, we should, I think, pass a regional at this higher level that Sunnyvale is already at. So while that's not your issue, it's one that I'll be talking to the city council at San Jose and other spaces. Kind of the sad part is Saratoga and Los Gatos, some of the 2 wealthiest communities, they're at even lower than San Jose. They're at the state wage, which is I think $1 lower than us. So is to encourage those to raise up. So the other idea I worked on, which was the business tax, Measure G, and my students and I led that campaign and got $13 million more for the city. Again, that's a much longer story, but it showed that a group of citizens can come up with an idea and push it forward and get something elected, either through the ballot or through a proposition or through elected officials. And so, I'm willing to help anyone that sees a number in this and wants to change it. I'm going to put my email in here, and anyone can, I'm glad to work with anyone to change these numbers in our community. So here it is. So that's another idea I just wanted to say. And then the third idea I want to say is to think about a campaign around the tech community, because what's going on is, I always look, I'm a practical idealist. So either, when you have the money, when you have the wealth that's being created in our community, right? All this wealth, the money's either for the community to do things in the community, is either taxed. And if it's not taxed, then the other way is that people make donations and through philanthropy. And as you saw, we do not have a huge philanthropic tradition among this tech sector. And so one is, just that issue, but also the incredible lack of diversity within our tech community. And I'll just give you one example, but I could give you 50. If you just go back in the pain index, we highlight them all the time. But just look at Apple Computer. I'm using an Apple. I've got an Apple iPhone right here, and Apple Computer has it was in the last year's pain index, in their C-suite of senior executives, not one Black male in the C-suite. And they made a commitment in 2015, when they had to report on their diversity. They were like, "Oh, we're gonna deal with this," and they didn't do it. And after George Floyd was murdered, they said, "Oh, we're going to deal with this. We're going to focus on it." They didn't do it, and so it continues. So the numbers over in these last 4 pain indexes, I have a lot. In this one, we have 2% Latinas in the tech world. The Latina in San Jose alone is 13%, and in Silicon Valley in tech companies, they're less than 2%. So just an incredible, and the numbers go on. 85% of all Apple employees who are African American are in low wage jobs. So the numbers go on and on that we can turn to, and we have to. I think we as a community can say, you know what, you're in our community, and it should better reflect our community from the C-suite down to all the tech jobs in the entry level. That they all should represent our community. So I just think there's a great opportunity in the tech world to really, approach these folks and say, be good on your commitments that you made in 2015 and you made in 2020, but they haven't done. So if anyone's interested in that, that's just another idea, because wealth is created through these jobs, through those stock options, and wealth is created through the other way is through new businesses. And in Silicon Valley, out of the $19 billion, we covered this 2 years ago, the $19 billion that were given for new startups, less than 1% for African American, less than 1% for Latino. So when you're talking about who's going to get those, it's not folks of color who are getting the opportunity to create new businesses, and they're not getting the opportunity to be in these good jobs. So the question of how does wealth get created then? So I just think there's an opportunity there, and I'm glad to work with anyone on that and to brainstorm and to see if we can try to change these numbers.
I agree, Scott. And I'm speaking as somebody who, when I first moved to Silicon Valley from New Jersey, I worked at Oracle for several years, one of the few Black men who worked at Oracle. I was there from 1999 until about 2005, when myself and about 5,000 other people were laid off, actually let go as part of Oracle's acquisition of PeopleSoft at that time. One of the things that also I found disturbing is just the ageism that goes on with a lot of these companies in Silicon Valley, where I've heard stories that a lot of these companies used to talk about, they don't hire people that are older than 35, regardless of what their experience is. So I was wondering if also the issue, and that affects also a lot of these numbers, because these are people that are ultimately forced to either leave the Valley, as I've had to do, just to be able to afford to live in California, or also end up even going homeless. So I was wondering, one other factor to consider, just the ageism that goes on that helps create part of that very pain index you referred to.
Well, it's always, what I'm taking a note right now. And so for the other folks here on the, who are listening, please send me ideas. I will make an effort to have something around ageism in the next report. But I think it's really important. So it's a great idea. And it's gotten better by other people like yourselves coming forward and say, hey, we need to do this. Early on, I got some feedback from a professor up at Stanford who looked through the pain index, was like, you know what, the Asian American community is large. You need to talk about the variety within the Asian American community. You can't just say Asian Americans. And so ever since then, I've always tried to include as many folks that I can find, Filipino, Vietnamese, Korean American, and so forth. So I'm just trying, it always gets better because of ideas. So I will definitely add your idea, and please send me, if you ever see anything, any of you, that you think should be in the pain index, I'm glad to look at it. So please, you could send that to me.
So Scott, I have one last question, I
Yes.
think. You're at San Jose State. We know that's a big feeder for the tech companies around here. How is that working and how do we make it more? I mean, you're in our backyard.
Yeah, San Jose State, going back to Apple Computer, San Jose, what is the #1 university? And it's by a long shot of what university they hire from, San Jose State. So we produce a lot of computer science folks. I think the question is how, what I've heard from, and this is anecdotal, my students who are in my classes and are in the computer science fields, they've had interviews and have not felt 100% comfortable when they go to these interviews because the culture is not accepting, they feel, of them. So I've heard that from many students. In fact, in our very first pain index, if you go back to our very first one and you could look at it, is I think the study showed at 10 of the biggest Silicon Valley firms, 3 of them, I'm looking at 10, 3 of them had 0 African-American women in the, on the payroll. And one of the women who was an intern at one of those companies that had no Black women spoke about her experience at the press conference where people coming up to her asking what she felt was inappropriate questions, asking to touch her hair, things that were not acceptable and not make her feel comfortable. So I think part of that is like how do we make these companies be open to the diversity of our student body and accept them for for their various differences and their contributions. So I think it's a good question. I'm not in the hiring world. I'm not involved. And again, mine is anecdotal, but I do know that when you look at the other thing that I've been told is when they come out of San Jose State, they feel they are not given the same kind of jobs that other folks from Stanford and Santa Clara are getting. That there's a strata, a status in San Jose State, even though I think we offer a great education, they feel not as well respected. They've told me that too.
Wow. This has been a little bit sobering. Let's see, Marie Bernard is saying in the chat, thank you, Scott. We've met over the years, and I'm sorry I'm not there in person. I'm very glad that you are making this presentation at Sunnyvale Community Services, which serves low-income residents here at in the heart of Silicon Valley. Your statistics reflect the reality we see every day. We keep breaking records for the number of people needing help and the depth of need and the persistence of the need, reflecting the underlying core problem of the income divide.
So I'm hoping people can come to the August 10th event. It's at 6 o'clock. It's at you've seen that information. Please reach out to me if you're interested in talking about any of the ideas around possible solutions. For the mayor, if you're interested in meeting, I'm meeting with Mayor Mahan. I'm more than happy to meet with you, because I really feel like, we have a role as citizens, and then the electeds have their role to push. And so I'm glad to meet and to talk about any aspect of it and how we could, look at policies that would deal with that in Sunnyvale.
Beautiful, because I was getting a little sad, but when you said that and I looked up and our mayor shook his head, yes, he wants to meet. This is what we do. This is Livable Sunnyvale, and this is Sunnyvale Community Services. We're coming together. We can do this. So thank you very much for your time, your work, and we will be in touch.
I look forward. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Juliet, we're going to look to you to lift us up. Continue to lift us up. Okay, so I am going to introduce Juliet Pasquale, who's a community outreach specialist at Silicon Valley Clean Energy. In her role, she focuses on raising awareness of Silicon Valley Clean Energy's role as the local community clean energy provider and connecting residents with SVCE resources. She does this by building community relationships, promoting the agency through local community events and sponsorships, and supporting youth engagement initiatives. You ready? Again? Okay. Okay, so you're a co-host now. There you go.
Hi, everyone. Is my volume okay for the people on Zoom? And I apologize for that here. I'm going to be on my tippy toes a little bit to see everyone in the room.
A little louder, please.
Okay. Hello.
Much better.
Okay. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Juliette Pasquale, and I'm the Community Outreach Specialist at SVCE, Silicon Valley Clean Energy. Before I go ahead and start with our presentation about what we do for the community here, I do want to thank Scott, if he is still on the Zoom, or address his work. I would be remiss not to. It was very powerful to be able to see everything laid out and see the report before this meeting. It reminds me a lot about what I do as a community outreach specialist for SVCE. You know, we serve a very diverse service territory, all the way from Milpitas down to South County, Morgan Hill, and Gilroy. And we're a relatively young organization. We formed in 2017, so a lot of my job is to raise awareness about what we do and to continue to build community partnerships and make sure that we're reaching everybody. Not everyone makes a tech worker's salary and can make home electrification upgrades, which we do want to promote here at SVCE. Many of our residents are renters, so we have to think a lot about the programs that we can make to serve renters and people who live in multifamily housing. So my big takeaway from seeing Scott is really just the breadth of this community that we serve, and we are trying to incorporate more community feedback into our program design process and see what we can hear back from people, you know, outside of the single family homeowner space, people from diverse small businesses and diverse residents, and see how we can incorporate their feedback into program design. So still a work in progress, but we are really interested in increasing that aspect of community feedback in all of our work. And I'll go to the next slide. Oh, there we go. So to switch gears into just generally what SVCE is about and what we do currently offer, and kind of a sneak peek into the work that I just mentioned and what we hope to do in the future with our agency. So about Silicon Valley Clean Energy, I'll start off with our mission. And actually, just out of curiosity, I would love a show of hands. Who's heard about Silicon Valley Clean Energy? Wonderful. So a lot of people here are already familiar with us. I'm assuming a lot of people on Zoom. So this will be a little bit of review. I also spy a board member here in our audience, so could probably also give this presentation. So just as a refresher, our goal is really to provide clean, affordable, reliable power and innovative programs that all to reduce climate change and reduce our carbon emissions. So we have kind of the three main topics of what we do: the fight against climate change and the acceleration of adoption of innovative electric technologies. I can go a little bit into our decarbonization strategy in a later slide, and also to benefit our community by reinvesting locally. This is something that we is an ongoing mission to see how we can support our community. We have events, sponsorships, but again, trying to see how we can engage community-based organizations and offer grant funding and see how we can support them in our mission to decarbonize Silicon Valley. This is our service territory for anyone who is unfamiliar. As you can see, lots of the small cities and towns here in Santa Clara County, as well as unincorporated Santa Clara County. Our board of directors, as you can see, Larry Klein, our mayor, who's here in the audience, is on our board of directors. So we're locally governed by our local mayors and city council members who govern everything we do. I also am noticing that Colleen still has her hand up. I don't know, I can take questions whenever. So Colleen, if that was a question, I can go ahead and pause for you to come off mute. Okay, that might have been from my question earlier then. And I'll also mention a little bit about the community choice energy movement. Again, just probably as a review for some of you here, we started, or the community choice energy movement really started in 2002 with Assembly Bill 117. So it's been a long journey to get to these numbers here, 25 agencies serving 11 million Californians. And there was a long battle, from 2002 to 2010, involving a lot of California Public Utility Commission rulemaking for CCAs, as well as Proposition 16, which was sponsored by PG&E and was a bill to try to affect the votes for creating CCAs and requiring a 2/3 majority for people to vote to be incorporated into a CCA. And I keep mentioning that acronym. That is Community Choice Aggregation. We're also called Community Choice Energy Providers. So a lot of different words, but for the same thing. Community choice energy is really just when local municipalities decide to procure their own energy. So we have many CCAs here in the Bay Area. Of course, Silicon Valley Clean Energy serving a lot of Santa Clara County, as well as San Jose Clean Energy, which is a single municipality CCA. So whereas Silicon Valley Clean Energy is kind of a joint powers authority, which serves all the different towns and cities that I mentioned earlier. And you can look at the map and see all the different ones nearby on the peninsula and in the East Bay. So how does it work? This is a really good graphic just to simply show the different steps in the process from energy getting from our power generation to our customers. So SVCE, for our part, we are procuring energy. So we're making investments into clean energy projects. We are on the market for energy commodities, and we are buying clean energy on an annual basis to serve the needs of our customers. PG&E is still the one delivering your bill. We get a lot of confusion between SVC and PG&E, but really we are the generation part of your bill. PG&E is the delivery, the transmission, power lines, maintenance, and billing. And the customer, of course, when you receive the energy, benefiting from local control. We're a not-for-profit public agency, so ratepayer money for your energy bill for the SVCE side goes right back into the the local community and benefits our residents. We're able to provide an annual discount or a discount that changes annually on your energy bills for the generation portion. This year it is 4%. It changes year to year, but every December we're able to look at what PG&E is setting for their generation rate and able to provide a discount after we receive their rates, and that discount comes from the money that ratepayers paid, that we get from ratepayers. Convoluted way of saying that money is just right back reinvested into our customers. This is our power portfolio. We have, I think that totals about somewhere around 900 megawatts of clean energy that we've invested in. Currently, we have about 300 megawatts online in terms of long duration battery storage and solar, wind, geothermal. There will be several projects coming online in 2024, but this is what is under contract now, and we solicit energy procurement each year, and you can kind of see on the map just the different kinds of sources that we have. A lot of it is solar, a lot of it on kind of in the Central Valley, and geothermal kind of towards the east of us. And you can, the website, the Power Resources website does a really good breakdown of all the different developments, where they're at, and the amount of megawatts that we get from each project. So this has been our impact since our formation in 2017. In energy-related carbon emissions, we've seen a 29% reduction from the 2015 baseline. So our goal is to have a 50% reduction, but we are slowly but surely getting there in cleaning up our power supply. We've invested, as I mentioned in the last slide, over $2.1 billion in renewable energy projects, and we've saved customers over $90 million on their bills. And this will really get into our customer programs and our decarbonization strategy. So really what we have here is the overall structure of what informs our programs and how we want to get to that 50% reduction in carbon emissions. I will say that, you know, within this chart, I want to say that when we're talking about, you know, power supply, of course, that is procuring clean power. But when we're talking about mobility, I am talking about, you know, especially electric vehicles and how we're going to decarbonize our transportation. SVCE has adopted the strategy of investing in charging infrastructure and seeing what we can do to support the increase that we've seen in electric vehicles and how we can support the necessary improvements that we need in our infrastructure. So a lot of our mobility, transportation programs are related to EVCI, or electric vehicle charging infrastructure. And of course, the built environment, we are really trying to see an increase in electric technology. So of course, energy efficient electric heat pump technology for our commercial customers and our residential customers. And that last bullet, promote energy efficiency and effective grid integration. This is definitely in progress. We're thinking a lot about energy resiliency and how we can, you know, adopt all of this electric technology, have new clean sources of power, but also make sure that our grid is reliable. The California grid has really been reliant on natural gas. And I think about 40% of the overall state grid still relies on natural gas, at least according to 2021, 2022 numbers. And For what it's worth, natural gas is somewhat of a stable resource. You burn gas as you need it. These renewable supplies that we are investing in, solar, wind, geothermal, have a different aspect to them. They're definitely, you can only get the solar energy when the sun is shining. You can only get wind when wind is blowing. So adopting these energy resources and making sure that our grid can handle that shift to clean energy and still keep the lights on for Silicon Valley is something that we're thinking of. We're looking into demand response programs, thinking about things like virtual power plants. So that is definitely on the horizon to try and see how we can update our strategy to meet energy needs, have grid resiliency as we shift the power supply. Decarbonization strategy and programs. I mentioned this a little bit with our last slide for decarb strategy and programs. It's definitely looking at how we can affect the built environment with our programs for homes and businesses, investing in EV charging infrastructure, and really also investing in education and outreach about decarbonization, what it is, and how we can help people on the journey to home electrification. And I'll get into our customer offers and services. Our eHub is something that we have to kind of assist people in their electrification journey as an informational resource. So you can see on the screen, we have our electric vehicle assistant, appliances assistant, and those are really online tools to help people compare the characteristics of different cars, different kinds of heat pump, water heaters, HVAC, different induction ranges. So just resources to give you more information about what kinds of technology is available. And our Solar Plus Battery Assistant is really cool. It provides for our residents in our service territory the option to get solar quotes at no commitment and no cost, and get a battery storage, and see someone actually come out to your home, talk to you, talk about your energy needs, and there's a potential for the electric panel upgrade rebate. So I'm now at the Future Fit Home rebates, which is a big part of our decarbonization strategy to be able to make it cost neutral, or at least a little bit more affordable to be able to make these home upgrades. So we have rebates available for heat pump water heaters and heat pump HVAC systems. There is up to $8,000, and this does not, it's not limited by your income, but if you are low income or a Carefera customer, you get an additional $5,000. And I believe our income limits, our income eligibility limits for that extra $5,000 were just expanded to $130,000 for a family of 4. So given that it's much more expensive to live here in Silicon Valley, we expanded the income eligibility for customers that make low income for this area. And since home rebates are a big part of what we are doing and promoting right now, I'm really curious if anyone who lives in our service territory has looked into these rebates or has any questions about them. This was launched in January, and I think we've gotten about 130 or 140 installations from this program, but I'm curious to see if this crowd has looked into it or. It's since this began in January. This Future Fit Home Rebates program began in January. Yeah, we relaunched into a new program.
Colleen on Zoom has got her hand up. I don't know if that means.
Oh, go ahead, Colleen.
Oh, I thought you were looking for numbers of people that have looked into this program.
Oh, okay.
We've transitioned to heat pump this year.
Nice. Were you able to hopefully get an SVCE rebate?
I'm gonna have to ask my husband. He's in charge of all that. So I know we're planning on a rebate. I don't know if how we get it. If it's we kind of thought it was with the income tax next year, but I'm not sure. He will be looking into it now. I'll put it that way.
Thank you, Colleen. I see Bill has his hand raised.
Yeah, we transitioned to heat pump, water heater, and HVAC this year and received the rebates from Silicon Valley Clean Energy as well as from Bayren. So those rebates are quite helpful. It's not cheap process, even with the rebates.
I wonder, just out of curiosity, have you noticed a difference in your electricity bill? I don't know how recently you did the rebates or.
The installation started in November of last year. We noticed an increase in electricity costs because we weren't heating with gas anymore through the winter. But my PG&E bill last month was $17. So I think we're going to make out quite well. We do have rooftop solar as well.
It's a definitely a no-brainer when you do have rooftop solar. It makes it very cost-effective to switch to heat pumps. Agnes?
Yeah, I really know when we've had a full year how much we've saved because of the way in which PG&E calculates the true-up costs.
So this is Agnes, and we are going to be looking into rebates this year.
Thank you. I think that definitely seeing how you can not game electrification, but if you can do it in kind of a sequential process over a period of years, you can, I think the tax credits get really beneficial through the IRA. And then I see Julia with her hand raised.
Yeah, so we also went all electric. We did that in the past, I guess, 3 years gradually. So the last thing is trying to remove the gas meter. I see that I'm looking on your website. I see that you have a removal of gas meter, $500 rebate. But what I would really like to know is how to do it. I've been trying and cannot get through the get PG&E to come out, or I hope you guys have some advice on how to do it.
Mm-hmm. For the gas removal, we have heard that quite a bit, and for our rebates, we usually ask that you reserve the rebate before you get the work done, and you'll get the rebate after it's done. So you could reserve your rebate right now, and unfortunately have to wait for PG&E to come out there. We've just noticed that people have, unfortunately, a long waiting process for that, but you'll be able to reserve it before you do the work and guarantee that you'll get it after.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I always like hearing about where people are at in their journey and if they've tried to get our rebates. They're a great resource, and again, we've expanded our income eligibility limits. You can see it on our website, but if you know anyone who has been looking into this, you can get up to $13,000 if you have the income eligibility. So it's definitely, it's not a small amount of money, but it also is not a small amount of money to be able to make these upgrades, but something to consider. I'll switch gears then into the business rebates that we have available. that were recently launched as well. This is very similar, and it is up to $20,000 if for your local business, small to medium business, and an additional $5,000 for a nonprofit. So if you or someone you know meet these requirements, you can get rebates for going electric. We're really trying to do a lot of outreach to our business community and get people to sign up for these. But it is a challenge. So definitely reaching that commercial customer community is a big priority for us moving forward. And then grid shift EV charging. So if anyone in this room has an EV, which yes. Yeah. We have our grid shift EV app, which now, it used to be a little bit more limited in what cars would be compatible with grid shift, but now it's if your car is Wi-Fi enabled and if your charger is Wi-Fi enabled, or if your charger is Wi-Fi enabled, you can connect to our grid shift app, which will automatically charge your car at the cheapest and cleanest hours. So this is something that could also make somewhat of an impact on your electricity bill and also make sure that you're charging at the best times for the grid. This is especially something good for the summer. There are some events where you could even get bill credits for choosing not to charge at certain times. So when the grid has a lot of electricity demand and you refrain from charging, you can get an additional bill credit for your PG&E bill. We also have information on our Future Fit contractor training. I see a little bit is cut off there, but this is something where local contractors can do our training and get $500. We have some testimonials that we recently got on our website. So this is something that is a really good resource for local contractors. And that additional $5,000 you see there is for contractors that complete one of our Future Fit home installations. So if they get trained on our website and get to know the Future Fit home rebate program and actually complete one of the installations, they get that $500. And now I'm in the coming soon portion, but I will say for the programs that I've mentioned, that it's just kind of the tip of the iceberg. We also have several kind of commercial multifamily rebates and programs, technical assistance that if you're interested, please let me know. There's a lot of resources that we have that we want to share with the community and definitely to encourage multifamily properties and our local businesses to electrify. But this coming soon slide is the technical assistance for kind of our residential customers. So we are looking to launch this in fall 2023. And this really came out of a lot of conversations with people through community events, feedback from our program administrators, and just our own general contact info line. And people are really, really interested in getting hands-on assistance for their home and for their needs, and just planning out how they can best electrify, do it in a cost-effective way. So we're making the home electrification concierge services to meet that need. And this will be direct, customized help to people that need it, and of course, for free for our customers. So we're really excited for this program, again, coming fall 2023, and we're working with the Sacramento Municipal Utility District to help us run this program. So coming soon, there will be something new on our website. If you're in the electrification journey or part way, this could be something for you to check out. We also have in development something really interesting. This is our multifamily electrification direct install program. this is, if you see that last bullet, this is very early stages. We released the request for proposals just this last July. And we're really looking to see how we can meet that gap between single family homeowners and multifamily housing. This program, again, in early stages, but we really want to see if we could partner with affordable housing and kind of just start to finish the assistance, the planning, as well as the funding and the installs for electrifying these properties. So you can see the program areas there, all from start to finish, and even including some electric rate education and helping people decide, you know, is it beneficial to be on a certain electricity rate? So this is coming soon, and we're hoping to get some good solicitations and be able to serve our renter community. Since this is pretty new, if anyone is curious or has any questions about it, I can try to answer them. Again, we released the RFP just in July, but we're really excited for this program. And I believe this is my last slide. Yeah, so if anyone has any questions about anything I talked about today, or just about SV Clean Energy in general, then I'm happy to answer them. About Vargas, I'm actually not sure. Are you talking about the grant funding? Oh, okay. So the local elementary school getting grant funding to do the heat pump installations, correct? So unfortunately, I don't know much about that project, but I could talk about the grant program in general. So last fall, we released community engagement and resilience grants for our member communities. We got a lot of great responses, and I believe that we have the projects listed on our website. And you know, they're anything from, like our mayor mentioned, direct installation at a local elementary school, to kind of just hiring staff to do climate change education, decarbonization education. I think we've got a local library that got the funds they needed to do electrification upgrades rather than replacing old gas appliances. So they really run the gamut of just local public projects to raise awareness and to provide some local decarbonization. You've had a couple other different grant programs, but these were the resilience or the engagement and demonstration grants. We also had resiliency grants for local projects to have battery backups and things like that. And we are hoping to bring back the community engagement grants, where we have, you know, nonprofit partners, community-based organization partners who help us with getting the word out. We're hoping to have, you know, a lot of help getting the word out about CareFera and how people can enroll in CareFera to get that assistance on their bill, and also climate change education and electrification education. And then I see Bill with his hand up.
Yes, I'm curious if Silicon Valley Clean Energy is able to and has supported rooftop solar and bidirectional EV charging and other activities at either in the legislature or the California Public Utilities Commission.
So we do In terms of the policy side of things, we are trying to, keep a pulse on what's going on with the solar industry. I know very recently the NEM 3.0 was passed and affected people, solar customers, as of April 2023. We, for that recent change in the structure of NEM, we do support that kind of change because it really incentivized battery storage as well as solar, kind of equity in solar, in receiving home solar. So typically solar has been, for people who can afford to have solar, and they had a portion of that bill providing funding to make equitable access to rooftop solar. So we supported that recent change in NEM. As for bi-directional charging, that's something that we're really thinking about because, a Tesla battery can have up to 3 days of charge for a standard home. And that's a really powerful resiliency tool. We are thinking about how we can have a network of home batteries or a network of something like a smart thermostat where we can lower energy demand at times when the grid is really stressed. We don't have anything in the works, but of course, as we electrify, demand will only increase. As we move to clean energy sources, the grid will really be, strong at certain times of day and rely on natural gas at others. So thinking about batteries and how we can have, not just batteries on the long-term power supply side of things, but how we can have energy resiliency on the local level has been really important. We do have, from community resiliency grants, we do have some local projects that we've been able to fund, but this has been really on our minds as we move into more climate change events, as we increasingly rely on electrification. So it's top of mind for sure. And then I saw
Thank
another
you.
hand. I will say on rooftop solar, I think we do try to have a more competitive rate than PG&E as far as reimbursing our customers. It's small. It's about a few cents per kilowatt hour, but we do try to be competitive with PG&E for rooftop solar. Oh, go ahead, Gail.
Hi, I'm just curious. Are there a lot of solar panels on people's roofs? And does that contribute anything to you guys or not? Thanks.
So I believe the number is actually, I don't know if people want to guess, but I do have a number in mind. Anyone in the room? It was lower than I initially thought it was. 10, 5. Oh, okay. So 10 is the closest guess. We are at about, I believe it was 13% of customers with rooftop solar. So, for the amount that I feel like I see when I'm driving around, it was less than I thought. But we do have that amount of rooftop solar customers. And unfortunately, we don't have what's called a feed-in tariff system. Some other utilities and local CCAs do have that in the Bay Area, where we have, we can kind of draw on those local solar projects and create, again, a network to support the grid. I believe that is something that is also top of mind that we would like to do. But again, a lot of things are changing in the energy world, and we're trying to see how that kind of program would work. I believe MCE is one that does run a successful feed-in tariff program, so definitely looking to them and and trying to learn. Any more questions, either from the room or Zoom? All right. Thank you so much, everyone. I have our general contact line here, but I can also give out my email if anyone is interested or has additional questions.
So thank you, Juliet. Oh, and Colleen is doing the clapping. Thank you, thank you. That was very interesting. There's some good rebates. So we're doing good stuff. So thank you, guys. My final announcement is we sent just a few letters last month. One was about transportation funding. Most of that is going forward, so we were appreciative of that. One of the other letters we sent was on the housing element, supporting the housing element. And we also sent a letter regarding Moffett Park specific plan, which, yes, got approved. So moving forward. So good stuff here. Are there any other announcements from the room or happenings? Tara.
I'm just slow. Regarding the pain index, I cannot go to the event on the 10th, which I would love to attend and see what they do. However, what I would like to say is we have quite a number of people here who are probably pretty interested in, and Leadership Sunnyvale, if you wanted to do an outreach of some sort for the community on this issue and have conversations around it and presentations and something like they're doing, like I imagine they're doing on the 10th. I would be a big supporter of that and would be happy to donate a lot of time and energy for that to make it a public outreach thing, including whatever Leadership Sunnyvale can support. So thank you.
So yes, that was an option by Scott to put it on. So that's an interesting, I saw his trailer and it really puts a human story on it, on some of those numbers. Because, I mean, the numbers are sobering and it gets a little bit more personal when you see people talking about how it's really affecting them. So we will have a conversation, thank you, Tara, offline, and maybe we can bring that event, and Tara's sitting beside somebody else influential that may be able to help us bring it to Sunnyvale. We do. Sunnyvale Community Services, this is a beautiful space. Thank you again. So this may be a hosting space for that documentary. So stay tuned, but it is August 10th next week. In the chat was the trailer for the documentary, and going once, twice, anything else? Larry, Mayor.
No, I always have to have the last word if at all possible. So first I wanted to correct what I said earlier. So our minimum wage is $17.95. Mountain View.
Could you speak up, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Is that better? So I wanted to correct what I said earlier. The minimum wage for Sunnyvale is $17.95, not $18.10. Mountain Views is $18.10. The highest in the state, I think, is West Hollywood, if I remember. It's at 19. But there's, so one of the things that Mountain View and Sunnyvale did was put an automatic update, cost of living increase every year. The thing is, Sunnyvale capped ours and Mountain View didn't. when we did that. So that's why there's that 20 cents difference or 15 cents difference between Sunnyvale and Mountain View. But other cities are still following. You know, the biggest thing from my standpoint, and I've been pushing for years, there are cities in the county, Los Gatos, Saratoga, Campbell, that are following the state minimum. And to me, you know, those are relatively affluent communities that definitely, you know, when I talk to let's say our unions from a county standpoint, that's one of the things that they should actually be taking care of and pushing at each of those councils, because that they should be able to move faster than, and I can understand as you get further afield, as you get into Gilroy, Morgan Hill, conceivably slightly, you know, following the state minimum, in which is what they're doing, but especially some more of the affluent neighborhoods or affluent cities in the county, they could conceivably pay more. So I just wanted to correct that. So what I was talking about, Vargas, the SVCE ultimately gave them $500,000, $500 million to get rid of their gas furnaces and convert that into completely electric. So that's one of 10 different projects that Silicon Valley Clean Energy did, so that was fantastic. And then several other things I wanted to remind people about Tuesday's meeting. So Tuesday's meeting has several topics. August 8th is our next council meeting. 5:30 p.m. we first talk about village centers, so that'll be for an hour and a half. Starting at 7 p.m. we'll have a quick update from Evan Lowe on ACA 5. And then we follow that with homestead bike lanes, and finally a potential study issue on looking at adding additional office space to Block 6 downtown. So, you know, so City Line is coming in front of us to talk about increasing the height slightly, adding more office space, and kind of moving around what was previously envisioned from a housing standpoint. Not adding additional housing, but moving things around. So definitely it'll be an interesting meeting on Tuesday. And then just as an update, Assemblymember Lowe is having an event at Mission College, I think. What was that? Thank you. Yeah, August 9th, next Wednesday, to talk about multiple things, and so kind of giving a legislative update, also talking about SB 403, but you can sign up to RSVP on that, I think on his website. So just several things happening from a city standpoint that I just wanted to give you a quick update on. Thank you.
Mayor, can you comment on the electric train?
Oh, yes.
From your photos, it looked like you were driving one around town.
No, I was so just from electrification standpoint, Caltrain had the first trains delivered in the fall, and so I was, you know, at the head of the train in the fall up in San Francisco. But they are now testing electric trains over the next few days. Actually, next few days next week, or this week, I think, is when they started. As far as, or beginning of next week, I think they'll finally be starting electrification testing between San Jose Diridon and Palo Alto. But they were showcased at San Jose Diridon over the weekend, and there were about 4,000 people who showed up to tour them. So there's a lot of interest as far as electrification is concerned. And then I'm on the Citizens Advisory Commission for Caltrain, and one of the things that they'll be doing in the fall is a lot of pilot programs looking at bringing people back from a recreational standpoint to be on Caltrain. So, you know, parents with, you know, it's like parents and kids ride free, so that, you know, trying to get more families on Caltrain. Lots of different pilot programs that they're going to be trying to see if they can bring back additional ridership. But all this is kind of moving forward with the concept that electrification will be starting next September, fingers crossed. But the full line is now, they're still doing some minor work on the weekends, but they'll start, you know, testing the electric trains overnight from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m., starting, I think, the 9th and the 10th. But electric trains are finally here, and that's, you know, great from a emission standpoint as well as a noise standpoint from the peninsula is concerned. Any other questions? Yes, it is. No, so we're still not in chambers. There, we'll be in the Bay Conference Room where we've been for the last 3 months or so. Any other questions? Yes. Okay, I'll make sure that it gets passed to the meeting or to Livable. Because yeah, I got an update on that from Assemblymember Lowe over the weekend. Mission College. There you go. Perfect. Yes, but yeah, I'm sure there'll be signs. They're good about that. Any other questions? Or online? I'm here. I don't make it that often. Thank you.
And you really think you're going to get the last word here? Okay, good.
Well, I don't have my singing bowl to ring us out, but thank you very much for coming and being with us tonight. Julia, are you out there? Did you see my question? To put Julia on the spot. Julia is still our treasurer, but
Hang on, I have it somewhere.
okay. So Assembly Member Evan Lowe's Community Town Hall is Wednesday, August 9th, Mission College, GC 103 room from 4 to 6. And we'll send that out. And, oh, they want you to RSVP, so we will send that invitation out, announcement.
510.
So last month or the month before, there was a concert at St. Thomas Episcopal Church, and they graciously gave us a donation for that concert, $510. Thank you. Thank you. We will put it to good use. Thank you very much. And I think that's a hopeful note to end on. So be well. Thanks.